When we talk about nuclear weapons, the story is pretty much always the same, right? It's about getting them. Countries spend billions, just unimaginable amounts of money, to get into this super exclusive club. But what if a country went through all that trouble and then just gave them up? That's what we're digging into today, the absolutely wild and paradoxical story of South Africa's nuclear program.
I mean, it sounds like a trick question, doesn't it? Imagine a country builds the ultimate weapon, the final symbol of power and security, and then just changes its mind? It sounds completely unbelievable. And yet, the answer is, well, it's really simple. Only one. Just one country in all of history has ever done this. And that one decision, that single act, makes South Africa's story not just unique, but absolutely essential if you want to understand nuclear politics today. So we're not just talking about some little footnote in a history book here. This was a totally unprecedented reversal, a complete nuclear rollback. It's a story of how South Africa went from this secretive, isolated nuclear state to a global champion for getting rid of these weapons.
Okay, so to get why they gave up the bomb, we first have to rewind and figure out why on earth they built it in the first place. And the answer, it really comes down to this deep-seated feeling of paranoia and isolation, a worldview that's captured in one pretty ominous phrase.
And that phrase was the total onslaught. I mean, from where the government in Pretoria was sitting, the entire world was against them. They were completely convinced there was this massive Soviet-led plot to bring down the white minority government, using literally every tool in the book: diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, military force, everything.
And look, to them, this wasn't just some vague paranoia. They saw proof of it everywhere they looked. You had the armed struggle of the ANC, you had new Marxist governments popping up right on their borders, and maybe most scary for them, thousands of Cuban troops in Angola actually fighting their army, all while international arms embargoes were cutting them off. They felt totally cornered, and they decided they needed the ultimate insurance policy.
And here is the most incredible irony of this whole thing. The seeds of their secret weapons program, they came from a peace initiative. Yeah, President Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace program was supposed to stop the spread of nukes. But for South Africa, it did the exact opposite. They got assistance from the US and the UK, which gave them the reactor, the fuel, and even the training for the very scientists who would later go on to build the bomb. You can't make this stuff up.
So, okay, they've got the motivation, and now they've got the basic knowledge. They started working on it, all in secret. They created this cover story about a program for peaceful nuclear explosives. But really, they were quietly building a weapon they thought could guarantee the regime's survival. And let's be clear, this was a serious arsenal. By the late 1980s, they had 6 nuclear bombs ready to go, and a 7th was already in the works. These were pretty powerful gun-type devices, a lot like the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. But the real key to their success, it wasn't just building the bombs. Now, the real trick was mastering this: uranium enrichment. That is the hardest part of any nuclear program, by far, and they absolutely nailed it. Their facility, the Y plant, produced around 550 kilograms of weapons-grade fuel. That was enough for their 6 bombs, plus plenty left over to build even more. The point is, they had the capability. But here's the brilliant twist in their strategy. This weapon, it was never actually meant for a battlefield, like ever. The Prime Minister himself called it a political weapons system. The target wasn't Moscow, it wasn't Havana. The real target was Washington, D.C. And that led to this really unique 3-phase strategy. Okay, so phase 1, strategic uncertainty. Basically, never admit you have the bomb. Just keep everyone guessing. Phase 2 was the real core of the plan. If a massive invasion looked like it was about to happen, they'd secretly go to the United States and say, hey, we have nukes, you need to intervene and help us, or you're going to have a nuclear conflict on your hands in Africa. And phase 3, that was just pure desperation mode. If the US said no, they'd go public with it and force the whole world to deal with the fallout, literally. But this entire elaborate strategy, all of it's built on Cold War logic, was about to become completely useless. The world was changing, and it was changing at a breathtaking speed. And all of a sudden, the bomb went from being South Africa's ultimate asset to its biggest liability. It really all came down to this perfect storm of events that made getting rid of the bomb the only logical move. First, the Cold War ended. Poof, their main threat just evaporated. At home, apartheid was on its way out, so that whole siege mentality was fading. And then there was something they called the ANC inheritance problem. And this is a big one.
The outgoing government had absolutely zero intention of handing a nuclear arsenal over to their old enemy, Nelson Mandela and the ANC. So disarming wasn't just a smart strategic move, it was their ticket back into the international community. And man, did they move fast. We're talking incredibly fast. In February 1990, that's just weeks after they unbanned the ANC, President de Klerk gave the secret order to dismantle everything. Over the next year and a half, they systematically destroyed the weapons and pretty much all the evidence. It was only after the entire arsenal was gone, completely gone, that they joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and finally told the world what they'd done. You know, this one decision completely transformed South Africa's place on the world stage. This act of nuclear rollback, it let the nation finally shed its pariah status and embrace a totally new identity. And really, this is the core lesson of their story, isn't it? They traded a secret weapon they could never actually use for something way more powerful: global influence and moral credibility. You could argue, and it's a strong argument, that they gained more actual security by giving up the bomb than they ever had by possessing it. And they put that new credibility to work right away. They were instrumental in getting the Non-Proliferation Treaty extended indefinitely. They championed the cause of making Africa a nuclear weapon-free zone. And in just a final, perfect twist of irony, the agreement that made it happen was called the Treaty of Valindaba. Yep, named for the exact same site where their nuclear bomb program was born. What an incredible journey, right? From nuclear pariah to a champion of non-proliferation. But their story does leave us with a pretty critical question to think about. I mean, sure, South Africa destroyed the weapons themselves, but the knowledge, the blueprints in people's heads, that doesn't just go away. And the highly enriched uranium, while it's under international safeguards, is still physically there. So it makes you wonder, what does it really mean to disarm? When you look at it all, South Africa's story really shows us that disarmament isn't just some technical checklist you go through. It's a political choice, and it's a choice that has to be constantly reaffirmed. It proves that a country's whole idea of what security even means can totally change. And that's a powerful, one-of-a-kind lesson. Sometimes, just sometimes, you can gain way more security by giving up the ultimate weapon than you ever could by holding on to it.